the like blades on the inside are contorting me left and right. And so I can barely keep my head above water. How long do you want to live in the Kool-Aid machine before you just say, yo, tap, tap, get me out of here? There's got to be a different way about going about this. And that was my moment. And I'd read a book. This is a great book. After when I was recovering from my illness, and it was called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And I think anyone who gets all hyped up on the 4-hour work week owes themselves the companion book. It's not actually the companion book, but I think someone should read So Good They Can't Ignore You. And they should read that immediately after the 4-hour work week. 4-hour work week can get you all pumped up. Think about living in an alternative way. Rich Dad, Poor Dad show you that, yes, if you take your money, you put it into assets that produce more income, that produce more assets, produce more incomes. That's the way to go. Totally down with both of those. That's fantastic. Now that we're all pumped up, we got the rubber's got to hit the road. And let's go read So Good They Can't Ignore You, and let's get a dose of reality on the situation here. Last thing I'll say before we kind of move on from this topic of mastery is, I've actually studied with one of the guys considered to be the real rich dad from the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So his name's Keith Cunningham. He lives in Austin. And, he gave me such a beautiful insight, because I told him, I said, Keith, I don't want to be trading time for money because it's just like, it's limited. It's an infinite, it's a finite resource. Plus I don't want to be a loser. I don't want to be on the left side of the cash flow quadrant from Robert Kiyosaki and the E quadrant or the S quadrant. I don't want to be a loser. And I've just heard Robert Kiyosaki say that in many videos, like, you're S because you're psycho. You're crazy to want to be in this quadrant. And all you care about is security, not freedom. And that's the message I heard over and over and over again. And you're not a real business owner unless you've got team and leverage and on and on and on. And Keith said to me, he said, Tim, what's wrong with trading time for money? Like, what does Michael Jordan do? What does LeBron James do? What does Lionel Messi do? What does Drake do? Right? He gets paid a certain amount of money to show up and do a concert. Okay. So wouldn't you say that's time for money? Right. And I got thinking about it, and charging $1,000 an hour, that's pretty good. Like, you can get a lot done with $1,000, and you get a lot of your time back when you don't need to work 40 hours a week to make $1,000 or $2,000. Right. So he said something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. He said, Tim, there's nothing wrong with time for money if the time is worth the money. And that is where I think we ought to be, is saying, because even an entrepreneur or an investor for that matter, how many hours are you putting into choosing your investment? Okay, great. So you put 300 hours into looking at different properties or looking at different prospectus documents or, whatever you're looking at. And then you make a certain return. Okay, great. Well, guess what? Now you've got a time for money number 2. And whether you acknowledge it or not, that is true for all of us. And there is no shame in trading time for money. Let's just be thoughtful about what we're trading it for and if the money, in fact, is worth it.
That's awesome. I still want to kind of retouch on one little piece of mastery and then we can move on.
Sure.
But how did you actually decide, like, this is the specific thing that I want to become a master of? Or is that even really as important as just committing to the mastery itself? Like, how did you go about actually choosing that? Maybe it's the vehicle that got you to, but like actually choosing the specific thing.
Love this question. First of all, I think follow your passion is bad advice. It's popular advice. It feels good. It's warm and fuzzy, but I think it's bad advice. Now, obviously we can't do things that we hate forever, but I'll tell you what, Keith Cunningham has another great expression. He says, making a baby is a lot more fun than raising the baby. And you can fill in the blanks from there. So, and making a baby is a one-night activity, whereas raising a baby is like a 18 to 20 year adventure. And you're still, the kid's still going through college and possibly boomeranging, living back at home over and over again. So, this idea that, business is something that we do because we want more time back is insanity. I promise you, if you're going to have any kind of meaningful business or income, even if it's just, even if you just want to build your muse and you just want to make $4,000 a month or whatever to just cover the bare essentials so you can travel around the world and live in third world countries, like even if it's that, I'm telling you, it's not happening if you're trying to work the fewest possible hours in the beginning. All it takes is, if you're living the 4-hour work week, all it takes is someone to come and be your competitor. And they got to out hustle you here, Ben. All they got to out hustle you is if they're willing to do the 5-hour work week, and now you're out of business. You know what I mean? So like, there's just so much bad advice out there. And I think if you're ready to put in the work, even if it means doing some things you don't want to do. I painted houses, which I despised for a while, but I made the best of it. And I got through it. And then there was a point where I went, okay, great. I don't have to do it anymore. Awesome. I paid my dues. I think that being a human being, not just an entrepreneur, but a human being, I think it's about taking a look at, and so I invented this little framework for my own life and for my own thinking. And I encourage others to take a look at it. If we were to draw 3 lines that have an intersection at the middle, so imagine like a letter X, and then you put a third line right down the middle. So it almost looks like the cover of the Red Hot Chili Peppers Blood Sugar Sex Magic album. It's like the lines, right? Mm-hmm. And at the middle, that's what we should go do next. And so then what are the 3 axes? The 3 axes are, one is, what is your unique set of circumstances? The second axis is, what is your unique set of resources? And the third axis is, what is your unique timing? I get rubbed the wrong way when I'm at a conference or a seminar or a summit or something, or I see someone on Facebook or Instagram who says, the one thing you need to do is insert whatever they're selling, right? I don't blame them for selling it, but I blame them for saying this is the one thing you need to do. How do they know? How do they know that what I need to do next is Facebook ads? Maybe what I'm selling is a tub for senior citizens with like the wall of the tub swings open so the senior citizens can walk through instead of having to throw their leg over the top like most of us do when we get into the tub. And, these senior citizens like still have flip phones. So, okay, hold on. But the one thing I'm supposed to do, Ben, is Facebook ads. That makes no sense at all. If I'm selling that step through tub, I'd probably better to like get my product featured on The Price is Right and let Drew Carey, talk about in Showcase Showdown #2, all the features of this amazing step through tub, because that would make a lot more sense, because that's where my customers are actually sitting and watching, is on Price is Right, not on a mobile enabled Facebook ad for, the Facebook app. Like, come on, you're telling me the one thing we all need to do is Facebook ads? Like, come on. So, and, insert whatever you want. I'm not ripping on Facebook ads. That could be writing a book, starting a podcast, Instagram ads, Instagram stories, Facebook Live, starting an Amazon business. Like, oh my God, like there's no end to it. So how do we navigate that? Well, we have to say, what is my unique set of circumstances, resources, and timing? And so for me, I'm like laying in bed, can't move, more or less can't move pain-free for sure, for months. And I'm starting to come out on the other end of that. And I'm going like, well, what can I do with a laptop from bed once I can type again? And I went, well, I can do internet things. Okay, great. So who do I know in my unique set of resources around me? Who else knows about these internet things? And my buddy, Mark, had Canada's biggest online supplement store, kind of like the bodybuilding.com of Canada. And so I just called him one day and I was like, hey man, where do your customers come from? Like, how do people just magically find your website? So this was me going to my unique set of resources. I knew a guy. And he said, oh, Google AdWords. And I said, okay, great. What's that? And so he explained it and just the basics. And I said, okay, great. How can I learn to do it? And he said, well, I'll send you an ebook. And I said, okay, great. How much is it? He's, well, you'll click on the link and it's $97. And I went, well, that's great, Mark, but I don't have $97. In fact, I'm down $120,000. He said, okay. It's cool, Tim. I'll send you the link to the book itself and I'll give you the login information. So more or less, I'm stealing the ebook at this point. And it was Perry Marshall's, ultimate guide to Google AdWords, or definitive guide to Google AdWords. And pause that story. Years later, guess what? I've now spoken with Perry 3 times. And every time I see him, I apologize again and again and again for stealing his book. Thankfully, I've since also paid him thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to attend some of his courses. So in terms of lifetime value of this customer, he was definitely in a better position to let the piracy slide for the, the whatever thousands and thousands of dollars he's made from me. So, but stealing books is bad. Don't do it. I'm not endorsing it. So I got a couple resources around me. I've got this buddy, I've got this ebook, and I'm going like, okay, what else is in my environment? Because like when you're down 120 grand, you can't fly somewhere to take some seminar, or you can't buy another online course. And I went, oh, my dad is in my environment. He's got a business. Maybe I can combine my buddy with the ebook to learn some things that I can then take to my dad's company. And maybe he would be willing to. So that was my unique set of resources. My unique set of circumstances is I can't walk. I'm sitting in a bed. I have a lot of time. That was a huge resource I had because I couldn't do anything else. So I had a lot of time and I had a laptop and I had an internet connection. Okay, great. So how can I take my unique set of resources, my unique set of circumstances with my unique timing? In this instance, the timing was right. I needed money, ASAP. This made a ton of sense. Let's go right now. And off I went. So, I just kind of kept doing that. What's my circumstances? What's my resources? What's my timing? And before I knew it, I knew how to do AdWords. I knew how to do landing pages, websites, email marketing, lead magnets. And I remember it was like 7 months later, I woke up and I was back in my bed in my own townhouse, not living with my parents anymore. And I always remember my eyes opened and I looked at the ceiling. And the first thought that came into my head is, I guess I've got a marketing company. Because I had 7 clients. I'd replaced my painting income. And I had enough different clients to feel like if one dropped off, I'd still be okay. So I went, well, okay, I guess I need a name. Like the marketing company doesn't have a marketing name, like kind of funny. So I just called it Tim Francis Marketing, one of the most uncreative names for a supposedly creative marketing company. And sure enough, the domain was available. And after that, I barely ever even really built much of a website, because I got so good they couldn't ignore me. One client would hire me more and more and more and more, and one would recommend me to their friend, a fellow entrepreneur, and then I'd have more clients and referrals and repeat work and on and on. And I don't even remember when it happened, but it was just like one day I logged into my sales software and I realized I'd sold over $100,000 in that 6 or 7 months. I was like, oh, I guess that's it. I have a 6-figure business. And it's not because I was going for a 6-figure business. I mean, I wanted one, but it's because I put in the time and I became so good that people couldn't ignore me and they kept hiring me. And I'll tell you, if anyone out there doesn't have a 6-figure business yet, if you want to know what it feels like to own a 6-figure business, it feels exactly how you feel right now. It feels no different. It's exactly the same feeling. The only difference is that you've got, quite possibly more money in your bank. However, the thing is oftentimes when we make more money, we also spend more money. So it's not like all of a sudden someone shows up at your check with some big lottery winning check that says here's your 6-foot tall thing that says you've made it. It's not like dancing girls bounce out of a cake and confetti comes from the roof. That's not what happens when you cross 100,000 or 1 million or 10 million or 100 million or $1 billion in revenue. It's just you wake up and one day it happened and you go, oh, well, I guess this is me. This is my life. And sure don't feel any different than yesterday, but I guess now I can say I've built a 6-figure business. So that's what it feels like. So I just think at every stage of my life, ever since the illness, I've just been continually asking myself, how can I find unique set of circumstances, resources, timing? How can I apply my skills to an opportunity that's going to bring in enough money that makes it worthwhile? And I am a millennial. In fact, the other day I was called a senior millennial, which was kind of funny. But apparently I'm a senior millennial because I'm one of the first years of being a millennial. And yes, I care about impact. And yes, I care about contribution. And I'll tell you that, contribution to the world and income, like personal and business income, the world is not set up to be one or the other. You can have both. And I think if you ignore either, you're probably selling yourself a little short, probably. And if everyone runs around and says, well, I don't really need to make much money because I just, I'm going to live in Thailand and I'm going to make $500 a month and I'm just going to kind of get by, whatever. if you're being super honest with yourself, if that's a standard of life that you want, then more power to you. I'll tell you though, it's possible to make a good deal of money in this world and on this planet while making a great contribution, making a great difference for people, to still keep your integrity, be a good person, and make a lot of money. It can all coexist. So I think just to wrap up this point, I'd read a book called The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. And he talked about there's really two mindsets out there, and you kind of have to figure out which one you're in. One is the consumer mindset. And that consumer mindset is, when do I get to buy the next MacBook Air or the new iPhone? When do I get to buy plane tickets to travel somewhere epic? When do I get the new, Louis Vuitton purse? When do I get to buy the cool car? When do I get? And that's a consumer mindset. And as long as you buy into that and that's what's driving you, you will end up broke and you'll end up in trouble pretty much every single time. And if you're not broke, it's coming. Like even, unless you've got like a $1 billion trust fund that your parents gave you and you can't spend the money fast enough, good Lord, the end is coming and it's not going to be very comfortable when it does. On the other hand, MJ DeMarco describes a different mindset, and that's the producer mindset. And that's saying, how can I create a course that helps people to do something? How can I create a product that people want that's going to make making their coffee in the morning a little more enjoyable? How can I teach others? How can I mentor others? How can I be mentored? I mean, there's just so much around the world of producing, and how can I take a course to improve my skills? How can I become more valuable to the world around me? How can I go from being, metaphorically speaking, from the unit clerk to the nurse, from, and from the assistant nurse to the main nurse? I can go from being the main nurse to the assistant surgeon, to being the surgeon, to being the one who like runs the surgeons, to then like owning the hospital. Like, how can I continue delivering more value to the world with every single week that goes by, every month that goes by, every year that goes by? And you know what? The rest will fall into place. I was chasing Forbes. I was chasing Inc. magazine. I was chasing fame. And I was also chasing money in the time leading up to my illness. After my illness, and when I got my head screwed on straight, it was Forbes who found me. It was an Inc. writer who asked me if they could do a story about us. It was someone who invited me to be a guest lecturer at NYU, right? Which is like 1/2 a step below Ivy League schools, right? So, like, not to say I didn't do anything to help inspire NYU and Inc. and Forbes. I still had a role to play in all that. But I'll tell you what, if you're focused on fame and fortune, it's probably going to be a grind. On the other hand, if you're focused on being so good they can't ignore you and taking those talents and applying them to opportunities, whether that's markets or clients who have the money to pay you, like, you'll find very quickly life gets a lot easier, a lot faster.
That's amazing. It seems like really the key there is to stop drinking the Kool-Aid as quickly as possible. Get really, really honest with yourself about, okay, what are my resources? What is my situation? What does my environment look like? Who am I? What am I actually good at? And then commit to putting in hard work and not chasing the money, the fame, but chasing becoming more valuable, upgrading your skills, and becoming a master at something or multiple things, and focusing on that to the point where you're so good they can't help but reward, like the world, the market can't help but reward you with the money, the fame, or the other things that come with that.
Yeah, 100%. If I said to you, could you charge $1,000 an hour? And that's not a personal question to you, Ben, but just to anyone listening, could you charge $1,000 an hour and people would be thrilled with the outcome and want you back? Now, some people hear that statement and immediately go, who could ever possibly make $1,000 an hour? Like, that's insanity. That's more than what a lot of doctors and lawyers charge, right? Well, okay, so check this out. In a 74-day period, so less than 3 months, I helped the company find $472,000 in pre-tax profit. If you own that company, would you hire me for $1,000 an hour if I helped you find $472,000 in pre-tax profit? Hell yeah.
Yes. As
Right.
long as you're not working 472 hours.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Yeah. It was about 20. It's about 20 hours. Would you pay $1,000 an hour if I uncovered for you a $2.8 million opportunity that had been under your nose for the last 20 years of your career? You just didn't see it because you didn't know how to look at financials accurately.
Yes.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Would you pay $4,000 to be in a program that I'm offering if it means it would free up your time that you get to go launch your next $250,000 program, like a program that you're selling to the world and you make $250,000, right? So like, these are all true stories. These are all true stories from my two different companies of clients who've come to us and they've paid us $1,000 an hour on my consulting side or in my company, Great Assistant, people paying us, match fees and labor to get an assistant and whatnot. Like, when you can make that level of impact for people, or if you go all the way back to when I was charging $40 an hour as a marketing consultant, when I can generate 1,371 leads or whatever that is for a business, like, you bet you that business owner is like, please come back, please do this again. In fact, like, they may even offer to bring you on staff. I've had, it was so interesting. It was 2 years ago. In the course of 5 weeks, I had 2 companies offer me $10,000 a month to come and be their interim COO. And a third company offered me, it was like 10% of all their real estate holdings, which was measured in the millions of dollars. And I actually said no to all 3 of them. And like, that's what happens when you get so good at what you're doing. Now, I am not here saying I'm the king of business, nor am I here saying that I've figured it out, nor am I here saying that I'm at the top of the mountain. There's nothing more for me to learn. Are you kidding me? I get my ass kicked every quarter. 2019 has been a challenging year. I've learned some very expensive mistakes. I made at least $120,000 to $150,000 mistake. So the numbers just get bigger, the wins get bigger, the losses get bigger, the challenge is bigger, the complexity is bigger, and it just requires you to play at a different level. Like, if you're going to play street hockey, or football in the backyard, you don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need a lot of rules. Like, people aren't exactly colliding into each other with that much velocity. But if you're going to play in the NFL, and you've got a 350-pound man colliding into a 370-pound man on the O-line, you better have world-class helmets and pads and technique to protect yourself. And you better be strong and ready to handle it. So it's just a different level. And I think that if someone doesn't love the process, I just get very worried that they're not going to survive that battle of attrition that we talked about earlier. Like, the key to winning the game is staying in the game long enough until you win the game. And I'm also not here to be the no fun police, right? Like, some of the experiences I've had in the last few years are the stuff of legend. Like, I was a part of like racing an Audi R8 V10 around the F1 track here in Austin. I've gone to some of the most beautiful concert halls, like Carnegie Hall in New York City. I was in New York City. I watched the ball drop in Times Square on New Year's Eve. Now, here's the thing. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can go stand in line starting at 9 a.m. You have to start standing in line at Times Square, and it's free, and you freeze your ass off, and you're uncomfortable, and God help you if you have to pee, because if you pee, you can't get back in. So you have to hold your pee from 9 a.m. until 12:05 a.m., right? Even then you can't get to a bathroom. It's probably more like 1 a.m. So you got to hold your pee for like 20 hours, and you better bring some snacks because you can't leave to eat, and you got to stand for 20 hours. You can do that version if you want. When you make it up the curve, up like the 80-20 curve of being able to learn how to make some money, right? You do it the other way. And the other way is, I bought 2 tickets. I think they were $600 a piece, me and the girl I was there with. And you get to stroll in, you get to hang out at a restaurant, you sit, unlimited food, unlimited drinks, unlimited appetizers, unlimited bathroom. Like, you can go to the bathroom as many times as you want. And you do that from like about 9 p.m. with other people who've all paid tickets to be there. And 15 minutes before the ball drops, you're very comfortably, you can put on your jacket, take your time, put on your scarf. You get escorted out into the middle of the fray, You get to watch the ball drop. And that is a hell of a lot more comfortable than spending 20 hours crossing your legs, hope you don't pee yourself. So there's nothing wrong with doing it the first way, right? But I'm just saying, coming from a guy who couldn't walk, who is $120,000 in debt, has paid it off, and is now charging $1,000 an hour. I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and I will tell you that putting in the time and the reps and becoming so good they can't ignore you just creates the dream life that you've read about in the books. And it exists. I've been on both sides of it. And it's also not something that's permanent. Like, at any time I could make a decision that tanks my company and I could be back to, being, broke and or in debt again. It's totally possible. Like, there's no such thing as permanent success. There's no such thing as permanent wealth. There's no such thing as permanent health, permanent relationships. I also think the idea of passive income does not exist. There's things that take a lot less work for sure. But if you think anything in life is passive, you are kidding yourself, and you got to get real. Because even a piece of real estate, even if you own an apartment building, even if it was managed by an in-house tenant manager who lives on the first floor in the supervisor unit, even if you had someone else managing all of that, or a property management company or something like that, guess what? Guess who's still getting a phone call if the boiler goes out and you got to pony up 60 grand, right? You got to come up with the money. You got to put some time. You got to, look at the financials. You got to you probably have to talk to a couple of vendors to see what's the best plumber that we should use to put this new boiler in to provide hot water for my apartment building or whatever it is. You still have to put time and energy in. So and even if you had someone managing that, you still got to manage the person managing the thing. Cause at the end of the day, you're the owner and you got to deal with it. So I just think let's just get focused on getting talented at what we do. And let's get focused on doing great things, and let's keep our head up, and this is why at least once a quarter, you want to be really zooming out and get the 30,000 foot view. What are my circumstances? What are my resources? What are my timing? What are my gaps in knowledge? What are my gaps in money? What are my gaps in networks? What are my gaps in customer lists? What are my gaps all over the place? And to take a good view, because if you're constantly just grinding every single day, which is important, often you just never get that view. It's like, at the arcade or at the carnival, there's that whack-a-mole game where all the little groundhog guys keep popping up, and you've got the hammer thing. Mm-hmm. You keep whacking them left and right. Well, what you could do is you could just keep whacking them. But first of all, the more you whack them, the faster they come up, right? That's how the game's designed. And your shoulder at some point is going to get really tired. And so we got to do some whacking of the moles, no question about it. However, how great would it be if every 90 days you step back and you said, how can I make this go away once and for all? And you kind of tilt your head to the side and you look around the right edge of the whole arcade game. And you notice this funny little black cable coming out of the back of the machine. And so then you go and you investigate and you notice, on one end, it's plugged into the back of the machine, and the other end, it's plugged into the wall. What would happen if I just unplugged it? Right? We unplugged the machine, all those little moles or groundhogs can't come up anymore. Problem solved, right? And that's what the role of that 90-day kind of zoom out is. So I just think in terms of mastery, in terms of where should we apply ourselves next, I wouldn't chase what gives me the most passion. I would say, how can I get really talented? And when a person reads So Good They Can't Ignore You, they'll read about study after study after study on workplace satisfaction. The number one determinant is actually competency, not was it something that I knew how to do when I was younger, or does it make me feel famous, or anything no. It's when we feel that we're good at our work, we get the most satisfaction. And that's actually a huge source of passion in work. It's competency and who we work with. That's the number one reason people quit, actually, if they're in a traditional environment, is they hate their boss. So if we can be working with people we get along with, and we can get to be masterful at what we're doing, believe me, you're half the way there. And the other half is making sure you're applying it to an opportunity that's financially rewarding for yourself and making the difference that you want to make.
So I'm curious, at this point, what questions do you still have about yourself?
So there's a great expression, and that expression is the three greatest mysteries in the world are air to the bird, water to the fish, and man to himself. So Ben, I promise you, I have blind spots that I don't even know that I have. And so I am constantly, whether I'm in a program, whether I'm attending workshops, whether I get a coach, and it doesn't matter if it's like traditional, like more a counseling or environment, or non-traditional, like an NLP or hypnosis, or literally just what is it that I can study next that's going to help me reveal my blind spots to myself? Because if I knew, like, for example, I have such a tough time going to bed, not because I'm like, I don't know how to go to bed. I know how to go to bed. We all know how to go to bed, right? It's not because I can't fall asleep. Some people have that problem. I feel really bad for people who can't fall asleep. It's because, like, literally, I don't know why. It's like, even on nights when it's like, hey, it's 1 a.m., you may want to go to bed now. Like, it's one of those nights when I'm not like cranking on something in terms of like, work or projects or building something. I'm still just like, I don't know. I'm suspicious. Like, maybe I just need to stay up a little bit longer. Maybe there's something else I could like figure. Like, it's just this really weird, like, I don't know why that is, Ben. I just don't know why I don't just walk to the bathroom, brush my teeth, wash my face, take out my clothes and go to bed. I don't know. So yet it's something I observe in myself. And so that's something I'm working on now. So I've got a coach helping me with that. Because at the end of the day, if I knew what was happening and I knew how to solve it and I was motivated to solve it, it wouldn't be a problem. This wouldn't be a problem. I know how to put on a button-up shirt. I'm motivated to put on a button-up shirt to look nice for you and your audience and to represent my personal brand the way that I like to present it. So I'm wearing a shirt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, so there's perpetually things for every single one of us. And I don't care if you're the Queen of England or the President of the United States of America or LeBron James or insert anybody you want to idolize. It's like everyone has blind spots and everyone is learning. And sometimes I think that, like, a smart person has the right answers, but a wise person seeks the right questions. And that's what I'm always working to uncover is, what is my next blind spot? What is the question I should be asking next?
I love that. And I couldn't agree more. I'm constantly searching for a better question and a better question and a better question. So I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually have a couple more questions for you. I want to be very respectful of your time, and I'm very grateful for the time you have shared thus far. But I want to know, what is your dark side?
What is my dark side? Can you say more about that? Like, in what area, or what do you mean?
Just as a human, as a person.
What is my dark side? What is my dark side? So a couple dark sides. Yeah, there's a few. I'll have a fun side too. There's like, when I was a touring drummer, I had an alter ego. And so when he comes out, that's like a whole other story. So, but you didn't ask about the fun side. You wanted the dark side. So we'll talk about the dark side. I think that the dark side for me is, I am still driven by fear of losing it all again. And like, it's not like I had a wife and kids, so like the stakes weren't as high when I lost it all in 2010, 2011. I still don't have wife and kids. I do have 7 teammates. We have hundreds of clients around the continent. If I were to go down again, if I were to go down physically again and financially again, it would take a lot of people with it. And for me, I feel the burden of that responsibility. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a bright side, if you will. The dark side is, ironically, I heard such a good question from Christina Wise. She said, what are the few things that would take you down? Like, what are the things that would take you down like in under 30 days? And so I was sitting in her workshop. This is just a few weeks ago in Austin. And I wrote down like, another health crisis, my reputation being totally ruined. I wrote down like a few things like that. And then her next question, once everyone had a minute to write down the top things that would really like ruin them, she said, okay, great. Now write down 3 examples of how you're doing that to yourself exactly right now. And I was like, oh, damn. And when it came to the very first one, which was another physical collapse, I was like, I don't sleep enough. Sometimes I allow myself to get too stressed. Sometimes I don't allow myself to just like play and see the joy of and the joy and the beauty. If I could turn this camera and you could see what I'm seeing, I am overlooking the lake in downtown Austin. It is breathtaking, the view that I have here. And sometimes I just forget to like look outside and enjoy the view. And so doing Christina's questions, it then made me go, is that belief that I need to work day and night, come hell or high water, that like I might lose it all, like that fear that's like in my bones from 2011, it served me well. It served me very, 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 very well for a period. And is that still the chapter of life that I'm in? And the chapter of life that I'm in now is no longer that. Because now it's my team that's doing a lot of the frontline work. It's my team that's dealing with customers. It's my team that's dealing with administration and dealing with like our accountants and whatnot. I'm still involved on a high level, but if what my team needs is a leader who can think clearly, who can have the emotional buffering ability, that if something's upset, I can absorb it and I can react effectively. And a leader that provides that safe container that everyone else can, like, even if the arrows are coming in or the like enemy is approaching, not that we have enemies or anything, but metaphorically, how can I be the edge of the pool? So my teammates, if they need to, they can come hold the edge of the pool, know that they're safe, and then they can go back and swim and play again, right? So that doesn't require, 90-hour work weeks. That requires maybe 8-hour work days, but I am focused and rested and my physiology supports it. Like I can't go and do a crash and burn 14-hour. I could, like a video editing session or graphic design session, or like, I love doing that stuff. It's fun to create. And like more than once, I've started editing something at 4 p.m. No kidding, Ben, true story. I have literally sat until 10 a.m. the next day. And I'd get up to pee like 3 times, had a couple small, like 10-minute snacks, but I was so into the video editing that it was just like, I actually could sit for 18 straight hours. And the next day I had stars in my peripheral vision when I was driving because my neck was all janky from my mouse hand. So I've pushed my body that, and I could do it again, but what's the cost? Now the cost is the next day I can't lead my team. My team needs that heartbeat. My team needs that clarity, that my team needs that stability. And once upon a time, the 18-hour crash and burn work session was perfect to hit a deadline and to get paid, because then I didn't have to work for, maybe a day or two after that. But now it's just a different chapter. So I have a different set of circumstances. I have a different set of resources, and I have a different unique timing. And so now I got to show up differently because we're playing a different game. I used to be playing soccer. Now I'm playing football. I used to be playing football. Now I'm playing tennis. Before I was playing tennis, now I'm playing hockey. Different rules, different tools, different playing surface. So to help with that dark side, which is like obsessive and like being driven by fear and all the rest, is I have hired some coaches. And so like literally at Christina's event, there was like a trainer there who specializes in both diet and exercise. She's worked with like ex-Navy SEALs. Like she's one of the best. And thankfully, because I have the time and the money, I'm able to hire her. And so she's actually come to my apartment. She's like cleaned out things that she thinks doesn't serve me. She's like helping you order supplements. So that's being fixed. And then I did hire a couple, a husband-wife team. I think they're husband and wife or fiancés. And they're working with me on mindset to root out what is this fear that's still underneath me. Is it from 2011 or is it from earlier? Is it parent stuff? Is it when I was in high school and or junior high and I felt like I got bullied, and I didn't feel like I was good enough, or like, I don't know where the patterns are. So that's the dark side that we're working on actively to kind of like root that out and see what it is. So I think that for me is in none of us can see the label on the outside of the bottle that we're standing in. So we got to get help from outside people, because otherwise we'll just be doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Last question for you today, Tim.
Yeah.
What question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
What question should you be asking me that you have not thought to ask me yet? What do you want to accomplish? That's not the question, but what do you want to accomplish? And then I can give you the answer.
I want to be happy.
You want to be happy. You want to be happy. Are you happy right now?
Mm-hmm.
And what are you doing to generate that happiness?
That's a good question. I'm doing what I love. I am surrounded by people that I love and I feel very loved by. I feel like I'm making progress towards more of those things. And I'm healthy, extremely grateful for my health. And I feel like I'm very, very lucky.
And what's standing in your way between where you are and where you want to be?
Probably myself, almost definitely myself.
Sure.
But I'm not exactly sure in what capacity.
Okay. So I'll give you, over time, I thought it was mindset and skill set. I thought that was the whole game. I came up with over the years of like thinking, well, my skill set, my mindset is good, but how come I'm not getting to where I want to go? And I realized, because actually I don't have the right coach and I don't have the right community. So then I thought it was not 2 pillars, but 4 pillars. And I thought, okay, I'm good to go, right? All I need is skill set, mindset, coaching, and community. Community being like people I can ask for help, people I can celebrate wins with, people I can cry on their shoulder if it doesn't work out. These people could be physically in my own city or my own home. They could be digitally, virtually, people I know through Facebook groups, or, we just chat over Zoom or whatever, right? So I went, okay, perfect. I got to figure it. It's just 4 pillars. And then I realized, well, hold on. If I have the right skills, the right mindset, the right coaching, the right community, but I'm trying to build a website from total scratch and someone else has WordPress or lead pages or ClickFunnels or whatever and can produce that same page in 5% of the time, they're beating me not because of skill set or mindset or coaching and community. They're beating me because of tools and possibly also strategy. So then I went, I guess there's six pillars now: skill set, mindset, coaching, community, tools, and strategy. And then I got thinking, this is now just a couple of years ago, I was thinking back, well, that's great, but I had some great coaches in the real estate days. And I had some great tools, like spreadsheets and calculators, and I had some great skills, negotiating and analyzing. And I had great mindset. I'd watch The Secret and I had my vision board, and, I was really positive and upbeat all the time. But how come real estate didn't work out? Well, there's a book, it's called The Ant and the Elephant. And it talks about how, no matter how much the ant travels to the east, if it's standing on the back of an elephant traveling west, it doesn't matter. Right. And so Warren Buffett's got this great quote. He says, when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. Right. With the water high, you can just see everyone's head. But as soon as the tide goes out, you can see who's got a bathing suit on and who's naked. And you're naked if you don't know what you're doing, right? In the peak of Bitcoin a few years ago and the peak of real estate, getting on 10 years ago now, like literally you could be like barely speak the local language, barely have any knowledge of markets or economics or how to buy a house or anything. And if in a lot of cities, if you just happen to get lucky and buy, 3 years later, you doubled your down payment, and sometimes a lot more than that. So there was nothing about that had to do with skill set, mindset, coaching, community, tools, or strategy. That was the big number 7, which is environment. What is happening in your environment? Because that absolutely affects your effectiveness. And it doesn't matter if you're a good person who prays to the good Lord and looks at their vision board and, has an MBA or went to school for something, or like none of that matters. Like if you're the ant moving east and you're on the elephant's back, which is the environment moving west, you got no hope. It's just not going to happen. So I think all 7 of those things, those are the 7 pillars I always look at. So for yourself, Ben, if you're just asking yourself like, hey, what's missing from me going to the next level in my business, or in my personal life, be it romantic or health or family or whatever, you might consider those 7 pillars, and you might use almost as a diagnostic tool. Now, obviously, I'm assuming that a person's taking action, right? Like skill set, mindset, coaching, community, tools, strategy, environment don't really do much for you if you're not taking action. But I'm assuming fueled by action, if you take a look at those 7 things as a diagnostic, you'll probably find that life starts to move in your direction faster and in a more exciting way than you previously thought.
Well, thank you very, very much for sharing those 7. I'm absolutely going to deploy that in my journal and start thinking about that. So thank you very much for sharing that. And, I want to say thank you very, very much for sharing this time and for coming on the show. It's been very special for me. So I just want to say thank you very, very much.
You're welcome. And I have a request of you and anyone who listens to this. Can I share that?
Yeah.
Yeah. My request is that, I've done my best to cite every single person who's written a book, said a quote, whether it's Warren Buffett or Keith Cunningham or Cal Newport or MJ DeMarco or anybody that I've mentioned along the way. And, each one of these people has worked very hard to earn their mastery and to come up with the concepts that they teach through. And so if anyone listening to this wants to cite those sources, I think that's fine, but just make sure that you give credit where credit is due. And if you're going to put it into a commercial work of some kind, like you're going to make some money off it, make sure that you contact the respective authors and just make sure that it's okay with them. And likewise, anything I've shared that's my own, like the 7 pillars or anything like the unique set of circumstances, resources, and timing, I'd appreciate attribution as well. As you can tell from my journey, I've lost a lot of money. I've made a lot of money. I've had some high highs, some low lows in my health and, in every domain of life. And I would be honored, and it would be a tip of the cap to everything I've gone through to share what I've shared today.
Absolutely. Well, I love that philosophy of making sure to give credit where credit is due, because I know that there are so many people who have helped me on my journey. And I mean, my journey is I've only been alive for 25 years. So that, that's in the greater scheme of things, it's really not a long time. And so many people have helped me thus far that I 100% agree with you. And yeah, absolutely. Absolutely from my end. And I would also hope, and I am confident that everybody who's listening and watching would feel the same way. So thank you again, Tim. Thank you very much. And to everybody who's watching and listening, thank y'all. Y'all rock. And I will see everybody on the next episode. Take care now.